For the past 8 years, Todd Bird has been the principal of South Park Academy, which is the adult education program at the Utah State Prison in Draper. With the prison's impending relocation to Salt Lake City and the adult ed program moving to the Salt Lake City School District, Principal Bird has decided it's the right time to retire from a terrific 35-year career in education. As part of a special feature we're doing for the upcoming Canyon School District retirement banquet, I recently had the opportunity to interview Bird along with many other district employees who've either recently retired or will retire at the end of this school year. Over the next couple of months, we'll share interviews and anecdotes from a collection of these retirees who've done so much to help educate our students over the years. Though Bird's interview wasn't initially intended to be a podcast, his stories and thoughtful insight are worth sharing. You'll really like the Rudy-like experience he had years ago with a high school football player named Reggie. My name is Joe DeGuinnessy, and I'm the host of this edition of Connect Canyons. I hope you'll enjoy this interview with South Park Academy Principal Todd Bird as much as I did. Did you want to get into education growing up? Was that your goal?
Well,
and become an administrator too?
Not really. It was really odd because I was a terrible high school student. And my high school counselor said that I'd never make it in academics and don't go into anything academic.
Oh.
And I was thinking that sports would save my life, and I had a lot of offers to go wrestle colleges, but nobody told me I needed to start at a lower level and that I wouldn't be accepted to those bigger universities.
Oh, shoot.
And so I was a welder for 5 years. And then I went through a time in the early 80s where they closed the place I was working. They closed that plant. And I found myself out of work and traveling to do field jobs. And I had wife and little kids. And so I came home from working in a coal mining power plant, coal mining power plant where I was welding. And I came home and I got into a discussion with an old friend, said, why didn't you ever go wrestle college? And I said, because I couldn't academically. And the friend told me, well, that doesn't matter. You can still go walk on. You can go enroll. You can pay your own tuition. And I didn't really know that, so I did it.
Oh.
And then I wrestled. I wrestled on scholarship. And that's when I got into academics, and probably my biggest accomplishment of my life was to go from listening to my high school counselor that I'd never make it in academics to get an NCAA Academic All-American honors.
Wow.
And then spending 35 years teaching. I spent 22 years coaching football and wrestling.
Oh.
I was a teacher, taught accounting and business law and entrepreneurship, CTE stuff. And then I went in, got a master's degree in counseling, went into counseling. And then it wasn't until I moved to Utah that I decided to go into administration. So but I've always gravitated towards working with that risk. So those students that will not succeed without my help. There are a lot of students that will succeed without your help, but
yeah,
I've always gravitated to those programs and schools and things that to get the student that without your intervention or support may not make it. And it almost goes for full circle back to when I didn't get the right help when I was young.
Yeah.
No one ever helped me make that connection that I needed to be both a student and an athlete to make it. And I had to put that connection together in college.
What college?
Idaho State University.
Okay.
So I wrestled for them. I was on a Big Sky Conference championship team.
Cool.
I even made the Olympic trials finals in 1988.
Wow.
And so athletically, I did get to go back and do whatever I wanted to do. went as far as I could go, and then teaching and coaching and just my whole 35 years of in education, I just don't feel like there's anything I left undone.
That's great.
I've done so many different things. I've had multiple state championships. I've coached in football and wrestling, and I coached at Idaho Falls High School for a number of years. Had a ton of success up there. Then I coached at Copper Hills High School when I moved here.
Okay.
But I got out of coaching in 2006.
Oh, okay.
And I haven't missed things when I moved on because I don't think I think about that person who coached 22 years and they never won a championship.
Yeah.
And they never satisfied certain goals they had as a coach or as a team, or never had that experience. And I think that was what makes it hard to walk away from things.
Yeah. But you were able to do that, and
yeah.
That's awesome.
The hard part's walking away from the kids, because you've always got those kids you want to work with for one more year.
Yeah.
That's the hard thing. And then you feel bad about that, because at some point you move on and you feel like you're, especially in something like wrestling where you're working with those kids sometimes since they're little kids in programs that you have all the way through high school, and then you get them almost there and then you decide to retire. So that's pretty tough. The reason I did that though is because I got an appointment to be an assistant principal out of the prison, South Park Academy. So I had wrote it a long time because I'd coached for a lot of years while I was a high school counselor.
Oh, okay.
And most of the time you don't have counselors, they're also coaches.
I've never heard of that, yeah.
Yeah, I did that. I did that in Idaho, and I did that here for 13 years. And I coached and was a counselor. Oh. And it's really tough because you're coaching every afternoon, so I chose to come in earlier in the morning and meet with students and parents. And so that afternoons I could be coaching. And so go to work in the dark and go home in the dark every day.
Did you teach as well, or did you?
Yeah, I taught in the early years. I taught for 7 years when I started.
What did you teach?
I taught accounting and business law and some entrepreneurship and different business classes like that, mostly accounting.
How long have you been in education?
35 years.
Oh, okay.
23 years in Utah, and then I was in Idaho before that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, how long have you been out there?
Went out there in 2006 as an assistant principal for a few years, and then when the district started, Canyons District, I came in here as a student support services coordinator, and so that was before we evolved into responsive services and student support and things like that. And then when the principal out there retired, I went back out as a principal.
What year was that?
I chose to go back out. That was in 2014.
Oh, okay.
So off and on, I've been working with them and out there since 2006.
How important do you think education is to the overall prison experience, for the atmosphere or just
I
overall?
Think so there's two things you can do with prison inmates. You can house them, or you can program them. You can recreate them, or house them, or program them, and it all costs the same amount of money. And so we talk about recidivism rates because the prisons are about 70% of those inmates are just a revolving door. They go to prison, they get out on parole, they come back. They get out, they come back. They get out for a few years, they reoffend.
70%, huh?
Yeah, 70 to 80%. So 95% of them are getting out. And so now you're down to a real small percent, maybe 25% that go to prison once and don't come back. Mm-hmm. But so they call that a recidivism rate.
Yeah.
70%, it's almost like nationwide, almost worldwide.
Oh, okay.
You know, it just happens to be, there isn't anything that reduces the recidivism rate that they've proven anywhere other than programming. Programming like drug and alcohol treatment, and mental health treatment, and education, vocational training, programming. So they haven't really broken out which one's more important.
Oh, okay.
But we do know that say someone gets educated enough to make a difference in their life career-wise or whatever when they're out, that recidivism rate drops to about 25%. The majority of the inmates coming into prison are at about a fifth grade or below reading level.
Oh, wow.
So there's that. And then at 60-70% of them don't have a high school diploma. And so they're not educated enough. And even the ones with a high school diploma, the majority of those are below literacy levels, below ninth grade level reading levels and things. And so they're even some of them who got a rubber stamp high school diploma, they're not really able to function at a higher level in society. So there's that idea that if you can get them to function at a higher level, maybe you can keep them out of prison.
Yeah.
Because the bottom line is if you've got somebody who's lived a life of crime, say they dealt with drugs and trafficked people and trafficked drugs and everything else, they might have made a really good living and taken care of their family for years and years and years before getting caught and going to prison.
Oh, yeah.
So when they get out, they have a choice. Do I stay straight and work for minimum wage?
Right.
And not pay my bills and not get to see my kids because I can't pay the back child support? Or do I go out and traffic drugs again or rob and steal again and take my chances on if I'll get caught? It's like I used to say when I did parenting classes and everything I would say, so you're driving down the road and you speed, what happens? Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. Really. Pretty much nothing. So, but if you're driving down the road and you get into a funnel of police cars and motorcycles with their radar machines out, you slow right down because you know you blow through that, you're going to get a ticket.
Oh, yeah.
So when we talk about consequences, it's like it's hard for people in the system, in the incarceration, to see that those consequences are real. Even though they're in prison, they're going to do their time, they're going to get out, then they have to make a decision. Do I take a risk on suffering the consequences again?
Yeah.
Or not? And so that's the prison mentality that we're always fighting.
Yeah.
So that's the tough thing, is the prison mentality.
Are there any poignant or interesting stories you'd like to share from your career or your time at the prison?
I wanted to tell you a story about, this is my favorite story about, one of my favorite stories about students or about in my life that has to do with sports, but it has to do with a lot of things. Because in athletics, it seems like, over the years, the kids that I've respected probably the most in the end have not been the stars. They've been the ones that work just as hard, but their sense of pride comes from helping those star players get where they are. And they're really the unsung, unrecognized people. And I think they're people that someday, are proud to sit in their living room and say, I used to get hit by Brady in high school every day, or I was his practice fodder, right? And but they're proud of it. Well, there's this kid, Reggie, coached him in football, and we were pretty successful. And he was always holding the bags. He was a terrible player. And he worked just as hard, sweat just as hard, worked out in the hot sun. Sometimes I'd have to tell him to hit the bag and make one of my other kids hold it. And he was more than happy to hold the bag for the better kids. and I was coaching defensive line at the time, and we're in the last 2 minutes of a state championship game. And Reggie hasn't been in the game because and I'm thinking of all my D linemen, and we're winning, but we're only up by 1 touchdown. And we've got them pushed back against the goal line, and I'm thinking, who haven't I got in the game? And I'm thinking seniors first. And I turn, and Reggie's standing right by me like he always does. Can I get you some water, coach? Something, you know. And I look at Reggie and I go, Reggie, have you been in the game? No, I haven't. I said, you're going in next play. And he says, no, coach, no. I said, look, you're going to go in. You're going to go in with my 3 high school All-Americans. And you guys make sure Reggie's okay. I don't think you're going to be happy with yourself if you don't at least get a down in the game.
Yeah.
So he goes in, and the other team keys on it, and they double team my good guys, and they run with a lead fullback and one of the best halfbacks in the state right behind him, right over Reggie.
Oh.
And you know, the thing in football is how many plays are designed to score a touchdown? All of them. If the play works,
right.
All of them. That's how you go 100 yards for a touchdown. So there's nobody between Reggie and the whole end of the football field in the goal. And they just hit him with a lead blocker and the running back right behind him. And I thought, we're going to lose this game because I put Reggie in. Who'd have ever thought? And anyway, as the running back goes by, Reggie grabs him by the foot. And the kid's dragging Reggie as my other players can get to him and tackle him. And they tackle him, and then it's in the mini dome in Idaho.
Oh yeah.
And they have a nice loudspeaker.
Yeah.
And they jump up, and I told Reggie you only have to go in for 1 play. So he's coming out again. And he's running out, and he's skipping, and he's jumping. And over the loudspeaker they say, and the tackle on that play was, and they paused like they were looking for the name. And they said, Reginald Turnage. And he just starts jumping and screaming, and he comes over to me, he says, Coach, they said my name, they said my name. And I didn't even know it was Reginald.
That's funny.
Anyway, so I tell that story because about 5 years later, I go into 7-Eleven, and Reggie's in there working behind the counter. And I see him, and he's like, hey, coach. And I go over there, I get my soda or whatever, and I go up to the counter, and he's just smiling and happy to see me. And I look, and he's got that state championship medal around his neck on a chain.
Wow.
You know? And I think to myself, if he hadn't had that opportunity, would he be wearing that medal around his neck? And we tend to overlook those little simple things that really make a difference in somebody's life. He played hard, he worked hard, he was part of a team, and he never got any recognition. But he was very proud, you know, of being part of that. And so over the years, I've just kind of kept that in perspective that, you know, I like that story, and I told my wrestlers and my football players that story every year since, and that was in the early 80s.
It's a great story.
I tell them every year, because I tell them that, you know, everybody is contributing and everybody is getting something out of this, and don't undervalue that, because there's a lot of people that helped you get where you are, and you know, they're all pretty proud of that. And so that's the Reggie story. That's one of my favorite stories.
That's an amazing story. I love it. What are you most proud of from your career? The impact you've made?
Yeah, I you know, I've always, I heard this once, and I've always remembered the fact that you always are pretty sure what someone else means to you, but I don't think we usually have a clue what our life or our impact means to someone else. But it does. Those things we do impact other lives, but we don't always realize it. It's like when you go to I go to a funeral when a friend of mine dies, and I haven't seen my classmates for years and years and years. And then when I got there a little bit late, and when I got to the funeral, a couple of people that I grew up with hugged me and cried and said, "Todd, you're finally here. Now we're all here." And I felt disjointed from that group for so many years. Yet they felt like the group was complete because I was there. So obviously I meant something more to someone else than I took for granted. And then I got one thing, probably the most special thing I was ever given when I was a teacher. I worked with this kid. I worked with him since he was a little kid in sports and then in high school and everything else. When he graduated high school, I got this card, and I've lost the card, but I had this card for many, many years and from his parents. And it said, in the card it said, "Thank you for all you've done to help Matt." Matt was their son. But then they put on there, "Always remember, when you take a child by the hand, you take a parent by the heart."
Wow, that
Isn't that good?
That's amazing. That's a great quote.
That's
Wow.
great. Yeah,
I felt that.
when you take a child by the hand, you take a parent by the heart. And I've been on the parent end of that. I've been on the teacher end of that, the counselor end of that, the coach end of that. And I could even say in adult ed, you could even switch that up. You take an adult student by the hand, figuratively. You don't take your student at the prison by the hand.
Right.
But you help them and you guide them through education, or you help them in life. And the people who love them love you. That's it.
Yeah.
They just, you take them by the heart. I've seen that when I've had kids at a graduation of their dad in prison. And the dad was speaking because he was one of our honor graduates. And he had this little 13-year-old girl sitting in the seat. He can have two guests, and he only had one. And it was her, and she's sitting there just smiling. And he looks out there and he says, "You've always been there for me." And he says, "I can't be a role model in prison. I can't be a good dad from prison." He says, "But I'm getting my diploma today because maybe I can show you that education's important no matter where you're at, and try to be an example to you today."
That's neat.
Yeah, and so I think I really, in 35 years, hopefully I've impacted a ton of people positively, and I tried to always, be positive and help people every way I could. But I'm pretty sure I don't realize the impact I've had on others over the years. And so I don't know if that's anything you can really measure. It's just, but it's something we do in education, and I think it's pretty downplayed. I don't think we've seen it a lot through COVID. We've realized how much just being there for people makes a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And there's only so much academics you can get out of staring at a computer at home.
Yeah.
Those experiences. Somebody early on in education told me, you want to create a romantic experience for your students once in a while. And I'm thinking, I'm young and I'm thinking, romantic, what do you mean? They said, that experience that just hits you in the heart. He says, I remember once watching a magician right in front of me do a magic trick that I just couldn't figure out. And he says, it was such a romantic moment. That's the way he put it. He says that I've been intrigued with magic my whole life.
Oh.
Because of that one moment. We think it's a whole classroom years worth of experiences, but sometimes it can be that one moment.
That magic moment.
That
as the
magic
song
moment.
said.
Yeah. And he said, so his thing, he was a professor, and he says, and I thought it was a little weird the way he put it, but he said, create that romance for your students. And I'm thinking, okay, is there a better word than romance?
It makes sense though.
But that experience,
you fall in love with that.
And then he said that we think we've got to do that every day. No, it just has to happen once in a while. He says, in fact, if it happens every day, people get bored of it.
Yeah.
He says things that are special happen every once in a while, but every once in a while you really have to get them. I've witnessed that with teachers everywhere.
Did you decide to retire because the prison is moving, or what led to that?
Yeah, I think I've been toying a lot with, of course, because I don't have all 35 years here. You know, you're graduating with a little bit less. I mean, you're retiring with a little bit less. So, you know, there's a part of me that says I just got to keep working more years. But timing wise, if the prison would have closed 3 or 4 years ago like it was supposed to, probably would have just moved into something else and maybe I'd still be working. But kind of the combination of where I'm at with my life and the prison closing, I just kind of got to the point where I thought, you know, it's a good moment to leave.
Yeah, I was going to say, you seem relatively young, and is there what's next?
I'll be 63 and a half.
Oh, okay.
So I feel older than I look. But yeah, I still feel young. There's still a lot of things I want to do. Not working wise, but just other things with my life. That I
Could you share a couple examples, or?
Yeah, I like classic cars. I've had some cars in the past that I've built, spent years and years building, and won every kind of national honors and recognition I could get off of these cars.
Oh, wow.
But I spent 4, 5, 6 years building them. I spent 2 or 3 years showing them. And when you show a car, it's really cool the first year. Second year, you might still be winning everything, but they look at it like, oh, it's an old car. I've seen this car before. And so then it just sits in a garage because you don't want to drive it.
Oh, yeah.
It's too nice. I've made them too nice. And then you get tired of it, and then you sell it because you enjoy building it.
Yeah.
And so I've been collecting parts and working on one last build, and I sold out all the other cars I've had, and I built a home down in Fairview, and I built a shop big enough to do one more build.
Oh, okay.
And I've been collecting parts for a few years for it, and I'm going to build a driver. I'm not going to get on the show circuit, maybe a little bit, but I'm going to build something to drive.
Oh, that'd be cool.
So I figure it'll take me a year or so in retirement to build it because I'll have more time, and then I'm going to drive it. I'm not going to just cover it up anymore.
Cool.
So that's one thing. I built a home on a golf course down in Fairview.
Oh, wow.
I plan on doing a lot of outdoor activities and trying to stay healthy and walk and golf. And I mean, I'm living right on a golf course.
Yeah, that's
literally on the golf course. The golf course goes around me.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And so that seems really fun. And so no, I don't know. Work has been a wonderful thing for 35 years, but it hasn't. It's not my everything.
Yeah.
I'm always trying to balance this huge life outside of work, and it's been difficult. So I think it'll be fun to move on. My brother told me, he retired a few years ago. He told me, because I was trying to make a decision. He says the perfect retirement is when you have 3 things. And he was told this by a financial advisor. And he says most people don't have all 3 of these things when they retire. One is health, so you can do things. The other is time, time left in your life.
Yeah.
And the other one is enough money. And he says sometimes people work for so long to make sure they have enough money because they want more money.
Right.
That they sacrifice the health and the time by the time they retire. And he says, he told my brother, you have your health, you have enough money in your retirement, you have lots of time because he was 63 when he retired. And he says, I think it's a perfect time to retire. And he says, you can always decide about the money stuff later too.
Yeah.
So he retired and he hasn't skipped a beat. He stays
great.
really busy. I just feel very blessed for all the children I have and grandchildren. And, they're, like I said, they're not all my biological. I have mine, hers, theirs, ours. I even have one removed that lives far away, and another one that I raised for a couple years in high school that lives in Italy that's Italian. And, I've just been really blessed over the years to have just wonderful children that I'm proud of. What I'm proud of is, my wife has a hard time with her kids, being out doing things in the world, but it's always really wonderful for me to sit back and watch my kids and my grandkids make their way in the world.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the way I say it is there's a lot of pride in seeing your posterity and stuff make their way in the world. And just that they're not just sputtering and not going anywhere, and some are more successful than others or whatever, but the fact that they're doing it, they're getting it done. And because there's so many people out there that I see that aren't getting it done, so it's really rewarding to me to see my kids and my family and even my nieces and nephews and stuff, that you might have impacted along the way, out there just doing stuff, making their way. And that makes it easier for me to sit back and say, I'm done. I don't have to make my way anymore in the world. I'm going to putter on my truck and enjoy my years, and I don't have to. I feel like I've just been driven my whole life, and that's one thing. I just don't want to be driven anymore for anything.
Yeah.
Does that sound bad?
No, it sounds like the
ultimate
ultimate goal for life. Yeah.
I want to sit back and enjoy other people's accomplishments that I've watched.
Yeah.
Kind of like Reggie, I want to be proud of. I am proud. I love it when I see past students and people that I've worked with, especially athletics and stuff, out there doing stuff and doing. I've got kids that wrestled for me that are great coaches out there doing great things as coaches. That's really rewarding.
Yeah.
To see that. So, no, I'm just, I really feel like I've left nothing on the table.
We'd like to thank South Park Academy Principal Todd Bird for sharing his time and tales with us. If I'm lucky, someday maybe he'll take me for a spin in his renovated classic truck. I look forward to sharing more stories from other tremendous Canyons District retirees I've been fortunate to interview. Stay tuned for those podcasts and other great content here on Connect Canyons.